Hey guys, it's Barb with Inspire Me 360 and back in Canada now. We had a beautiful snowstorm last night at the ranch. I just love it when it snows and it storms. It's some of my favorite energy. So I woke up this morning feeling very inspired. Of course, lots of snow, many feet of snow. So I'm going to be making some videos today. In this first video, I wanted to talk about conditions and really acclimating your mind towards what you are putting conditions on. And sometimes when we're working through how to create unconditional love or that energy of unconditional lovingness, when we're looking to create that, one of the most helpful things that we can do is really look at sort of the contrast or the opposite of, how we are creating that. And so this is something I'm really doing for myself right now, is I'm looking at every thought I'm having, every behavior, every belief, preconceived notion about all things, and looking at what specifically I'm putting conditions on and what I'm really layering in terms of expectation, assumptions, based on my previous experiences. And what I'm finding with this is that I'm actually really kind of conditional about a lot of things in my environment, in my life, even in my thought forms. And so again, it's a really simple question that I'm asking myself is anytime anxiety comes up, anytime frustration, anger, resentment, bitterness, that need to judge others, the need to kind of scold others or sort of frame them in a certain way or do the same to myself. So shameful energy, the energy of guilt, any of those really lower vibrational energies that are coming into my environment, I'm asking the simple question, what are the conditions that I'm putting on these things? And I'm finding it really, with that one simple question, really easy for me to target and zone in on what I need to fix very quickly without doing too much analysis, because it's kind of that logical analysis that I find bogs the mind down and steals our joy. When we're sitting there and we're too analytical, we're too logical, we're trying to think our way out of things. Well, unconditional love, it's not a thinking experience, it's a feeling experience. It's something that emanates from the heart and needs very little thought, if not any thought. It is just that natural state of being in which we have been created from source. So I want to put a little context around this and give this a little bit of an example in terms of teaching this sort of new protocol that I am integrating into my own daily practices. So let's say, for example, you are at work and there's, a really frustrating scenario and you're trying to logically figure out, who's the culprit, who's made the mistake, what is the reason behind this obstacle that you're trying to work through. Because anytime we're trying to work through things, there's an element of frustration and we need to sort of backtrack, work backwards and try to problem solve. And oftentimes what happens with this problem solving is we're layering a bunch of conditional ways of being onto that problem solving process, instead of handing it over to the universe and allowing something new, something fresh to happen. You're blocking your own experiences of having a new, fresh energy by being overly analytical, overly logical, and thinking things through the mind, which again, the mind tends to run in circles and it gets very, that's the ego aspect of the self. And I'm not saying that the ego is wrong, the mind is wrong. So I want to be really clear in teaching this, because of course this is a tool that we've been given to expand ourselves on the soul level. But rather what we can do is look at this, tool of contrast that we've been given and our consciousness has been given, and utilize it and sort of work backwards from it. So if the analytical, stressed out, anxious-ridden mind is the primary mechanism that we utilize to perceive the world, to view the world, then obviously everything that we experience is going to be very anxious, a little bit mundane, a little bit dry, because again, the mind it's not necessarily a fun tool. Now, again, I want to be really clear with what I'm talking about with mind, because there's consciousness and there's imagination and there's intuition. Those are all very different than the logical, analytical mind. So when I'm talking about mind, I'm talking about that logical, analytical, anxiety-ridden mind, the what if mind, the mind that goes back and tries to piece together what is happening in the now and what may happen in the future based on all of the things that it has experienced. And the mind is also very good at trying to protect us. The mind is fearful. So the way that it constructs its vision of the world and our experience and our environment and those around us, it's coming from previous fears, previous traumas, hurt, pain, and trying to avoid these things. And, again, in its defense, it's trying to prevent us from going through those same very painful experiences, because again, that's what fear is. Fear is this mechanism that the mind is set up to protect us. And in some ways, in terms of the body, okay, because again, this body is not eternal. It has its downfalls. It's not going to live forever. So from the understanding that mind has of the body vehicle, yes, these are all very proactive things to be engaging in. And I'm not saying that you don't take your body seriously or you don't do the things to protect your body, but everything comes down to balance. When we are trying to recalibrate and rebalance our aura, our soul, our spirit, and accept that our soul and spirit have jumped into this body or have taken up residence in this body for the purpose of spiritual growth and learning and expansion, then we can utilize the wisdom of the heart to then move past the fear that the body creates. Okay, and this is where utilizing, or what I've integrated in terms of my conditional thinking, is really pinpointing, again, what I'm finding that is so conditional to my happiness. Well, this has to happen, and this has to happen, and this person has to present in this certain fashion, and all of these things have to be in alignment for me to feel happy, for me to feel joy. Well, that's very conditional, and that's absolutely the opposite of unconditional love and that energy of the heart. And what I've noticed as I continue to sink into or rise up into the space of heart-based energy, is that there's this total relaxation. There's this dissolution of the need to control. Judgment falls away, because again, you just realize that every now moment, or whatever's happening in the future, it's out of your control, and to expect beautiful things in all that is. And every challenge is still a beautiful opportunity for growth. So you start to look through this lens of unconditionality. I don't even know if that's a word, but essentially, it's just a softening of everything that you are, a softening of your being, a softening of your essence in terms of your approach, the approach of how you see the world. And what I found too is the compassion and love I start to see in others is just beyond what I've previously ever experienced. You start to see everything through the eyes of compassion, because again, you're not putting limitations on your love. You're not making it so rational and conditional. And when it's so expanded in this way, you also realize that everybody is learning and growing, and you start to see each and every aspect of your day as just integration, a beautiful chance for integration, a beautiful chance for learning. And when everything becomes learning instead of fear or frustration or bitterment or judgment, if it's all just learning, then it's all really fun and it's all a beautiful challenge. And, again, too, when we can expand out from this concrete encapsulation of the body, we also really expand that feeling of unconditional love. Because again, when we put limitations on our existence, so if we are looking through the mind space of linear time and we're understanding through this scope of a linear based existence, I had a beginning, I'm going to have an ending, so therefore I have to set all of these conditions because there's all these time restraints and life is very stressful, and if I don't get it right, I'm just going to drive myself crazy. And essentially that's kind of what happens when we are angling our consciousness through this linear projection of the body. And again, that's very conditional because it's conditional on the body being healthy, the body being alive, the body being, at an equilibrium. Well, that's very stressful because none of those things are going to happen. The body is not always going to be in an equilibrium. The body is not always going to be stress-free. The body will sometimes age, definitively age. We know that bodies are not eternal, and we know that bodies are going to die. So if we take all of this conditionality into our consciousness, again, it drives us back into this very fear-based thinking. So take all of that away, start to accept that you are an energy. That energy, we can utilize a word form as spirit, this energetic spirit that you are. And remember, any words that have been used as teaching tools throughout all of recorded history, they're symbolism. It's a symbolism that we have, an agreement that we have made in the human family that spirit means this thing, okay? So also don't get caught up, remember conditional, in how other cultures, other religions, what word forms they utilize to, create an understanding of a certain aspect. And this is really important because this cycles back to non-judgment. We don't need to judge everything so much. It doesn't matter what word or what name something is. Love is an energy, and that expansion of what you are is the expansion of your conscious energy and that beautiful blueprint of a soul that you've incarnated into this body, and you're having this very visceral, three-dimensional body experience. But don't be afraid of it, and kind of release that tension of worrying so much about the body that you're in. It's nice that you have one, it's great, but don't let it be too conditional. And accept your eternal nature. Now, also accept within the premise of this that the linear mind, because you are a soul in a body, cannot perceive very acutely outside of linear time space. And that just is a faction of having a brain and a body. So at some point, you just kind of have to accept that the computation of the mind will not really get, I'm going to say that again because I had to stop the video there, that the computation of the mind, the way that the mind is structured, because it is, a three-dimensional mechanism, it has to perceive through the lens of linear time space. And so again, just accept the fact that you are eternal. You are not going to end. And just in and of that one very unconditional, beautiful thought, a lot of the stress falls away. And when we have that emptiness, when we've emptied ourselves of anxiety, depression, stress, frustration, judgment, guilt, shame, when we create a vacuum where those things used to be, what rushes in is peace, love, joy, reverence for life. And I'm going to cut this particular video a little short now. I think I'm going to get out there, do a little hike in the snow, and hopefully I'll come back and have a little bit more insight after spending some quality time in nature.